While the last video examined the price elasticity of demand, today's video looks at the price elasticity of supply and the income elasticity of demand. Please remember that elasticity measures responsiveness. We'll start by looking at the price elasticity of supply. Now, let's go back to our analogy of you're playing croquet and you hit a ball with a mallet. With the price elasticity of supply, the swinging mallet represents a change in price, and the ball's movement represents a change in quantity supplied. When you hit a ball with a mallet, you know what directions it's going to go in, but you have uncertainty as to how far the ball is going to go, because again, that depends on the characteristics of the ball, the friction, the ground. So the price elasticity of supply, that's going to tell us how far the ball quantity supplied is going to move when hit by the mallet, which is the change in price. There's a lot of symmetry between the price elasticity of demand and the price elasticity of supply. In fact, for the definition of the price elasticity of supply, just take the one for the price elasticity of demand, cross out demanded, and put in supplied. Formally, the price elasticity of supply is equal to the percent change in quantity supplied divided by the percent change in price. By the law of supply, this is always going to be positive, because when you raise price, firms are going to want to sell more, so quantity supplied is going to go up. And when you cut price, firms are going to want to sell less, so quantity supplied is going to go down. So the sign of the price elasticity of supply is going to be positive because of the law of supply. Let's work through three numerical examples. Let's say a 5% price decrease causes a 5% decrease in quantity supplied. The price elasticity of supply is now negative 5% divided by negative 5%, which is just 1. And as with the price elasticity of demand, the price elasticity of supply is a unitless measure. So this is just a 1 with no hidden units there. What this 1 is telling you is that a certain percent change in price caused an equal percent change in quantity supplied. Let's say instead a 5% price increase causes a 10% increase in quantity supplied. Now the price elasticity of supply is 10% divided by 5%, which is 2. The 2 is saying the quantity supplied in percent terms changed twice as much as price did. And finally, if a 5% price increase causes a 2.5% increase in quantity supplied, the price elasticity of supply is just 0.5. That 0.5 meaning that the percent change in quantity supplied was half as big in percentage terms as the change in price. We characterize the price elasticity of supply the same way we did the price elasticity of demand, except we get rid of the absolute value. So if the price elasticity of supply is less than 1, we say supply is inelastic. That just means in percent terms, price changes are bigger than quantity supplied changes. If price elasticity of supply is equal to 1, we say supply is unit elastic, unit just being 1. And finally, if the price elasticity of supply is greater than 1, we characterize the price elasticity of supply as being elastic. That means changes in quantity demanded in percent terms are greater than changes in price. What affects the price elasticity of supply? Well, actually, firms are usually easier to figure out than people, because firms, at least when economists look at them in an intro class, really just care about profit maximization. And so the only things that can affect how much a firm wants to produce when the price changes are things that can affect its profits. Often this will come down to costs. So let's say the price of a good goes up and a firm's thinking, whoa, maybe we can make a lot more money if we sell more of the good. But if it makes more goods, it's going to have to pay some extra costs. So it might have to hire more workers or get more raw materials. So the conditions of the labor market and resource markets will play a big role in the price elasticity of supply. So for example, if a firm said, yeah, gee, look, the price has doubled. We'd like to produce a lot more. Oh, but you know what? There aren't any more qualified workers to hire. Or if we hire any more workers, we're going to so raise the market wage that we'll lose money. Or maybe it'll be the opposite. Maybe the firm will say, you know what, we've got 100 great workers, but we could get 100 more for pretty much the same price. So yeah, let's produce a lot more. Similarly with resource markets. Let's say this is some good made with tin. And the firm, the price of the good goes up. The firm wants to make more. They need to get more tin. Maybe they can't. Maybe they can only get more tin at a great expense. This would make the price elasticity of supply low. The firm would be non-responsive to changes in price. But if they could easily get a lot more of the raw material they use to make the product, that would contribute to the price elasticity of supply being high, being elastic, to the firm being very responsive to changes in price. Remember when we talked about the price elasticity of demand, we said that over the long run, the price elasticity of demand in absolute value sense is bigger because people have more time to respond in the long run than the short term? Well, the same applies to firms, right? You're making cars and some crazy reason the price triples. You're probably not going to be able to make a lot more cars the next day. You got to build factories, hire workers, get more steel, get government permission. So it's going to take a while to adjust. And similarly, if the price of the good you're making falls and you're thinking, well, we're going to go out of business soon, it might take you a while to run down the business. Maybe you feel bad about firing your workers, so you want to, employ them for another month, or maybe you're legally obligated to give them a month's notice before you get rid of them. So firms tend to be much more responsive in the long run than the short term. That means in the long run, the price elasticity of supply is higher, the price elasticity of supply is more elastic, and firms are more responsive. Well, those last three things, of course, mean the same thing. Got a question for you. Firm operates in a country, and the country passes a new law making it harder to fire workers. Maybe you've got to give them notice, or you can only fire them if you're proved they're like truly horrible and evil or something. What does this do to the price elasticity of supply? Does it increase it or decrease it? Now think about both the cases where the price of the good goes up and the price of the good goes down. Please try to come up with your own answer before you hear my answer. All right, let's first take the case where the price of the good goes down. Now, the firm would, let's imagine the price of the good the firm makes goes way down. So the firm would like to greatly cut back production to save on costs. But maybe the firm can't do that very easily. Maybe the law is, well, we got to pretty much employ these workers. It's not their fault that the price of the good they make has fallen, so we're going to have to employ them no matter what. So we don't gain very much by cutting back production. So if it's hard to fire workers, firms will be relatively unresponsive to a fall in price. What about now the opposite? What if the price of the good the firms make increase? Well, I think it'll also make the firms less responsive if it's harder for the firm to fire workers, because the firms will say, yeah, we probably could really easily hire a lot more workers. I mean, governments pretty much never stop that from happening. But that's dangerous, because if we hire a bunch of workers and the price falls again, we're stuck with these workers. Or, we want to be really careful when we hire workers. I mean, if you can only hire people, but easily, if you can't easily fire people you hire, you want to make sure you're giving a really deep background check to all the people that you hire. So we'll be very, very cautious, very unresponsive. So I think making it harder to fire workers decreases the price elasticity of supply. Let's shift to talking about the income elasticity of demand. With the income elasticity of demand, the mallet moving is a change in income, and the ball moving is a change in quantity demanded. Income elasticity of demand is measuring how responsive quantity demanded is to changes in income. For normal goods, remember, a normal good is a good where you want to buy more of it as you get richer, the sign is positive, and for an inferior good, the sign is negative. So this is asking, for example, if someone gets 20% richer, how is this going to change their consumption of various goods? So you can imagine Pepsi, say they're located in some country and they predict the country is going to get 12% richer over the next decade. So Pepsi wants to know, well, what's the income elasticity of demand for Pepsi in this country? What's going to happen to the demand for our product if people get 12% richer? The most important economic phenomenon of the last 20 years has been rapid economic growth in India and China. There are billions of people in these countries, and they've just gotten a lot richer. They're still much poorer on average than people in the United States, but they've really had very substantial economic growth. China more so than India, but still, India's done all right. This has huge implications for what people in China and India are going to consume. You can imagine there's probably a huge number of companies that are trying to plot out, their marketing strategy and what they're going to be selling in India and China, trying to figure out what goods have a really strong, a really high income elasticity of demand in these countries, because we think they're going to be getting a lot richer. We think their economic growth is going to continue. So what goods will be able to sell them? Now, overall, I think it's clearly very good for mankind that these two countries are getting richer. But there is one cause for concern. People in India and China, as they get richer, some of the normal goods they're going to buy a lot more of are goods that aren't very good for the environment. For example, automobiles and air conditioning. Americans, Western Europeans, consume a lot more cars and air conditioning than people in India and China do. But as India and China get richer, they're going to want these two goods and other goods that harm the environment. So if you're looking long term, what's going to happen to the environment of the earth, you've got to take into account the fact that a lot of goods that do environmental damage have high income elasticities of demand, meaning that as China and India, if, and I certainly hope it does continue, but if their rapid economic growth does continue, they're going to buy more of this. But if you're a strong environmentalist, there's some pause for hope here. There's some reason for hope. Something else that appears to have a positive income elasticity of demand is desire for a clean environment. The richer people are, the more they care that their cities aren't dirty and that, the cute animals aren't killed by trucks or tractors or something, and they care more about trees and all of that. I don't know why, but if you notice that the people who care the most about the environment tend to be people in rich countries, and people in very poor countries aren't all that worried about the environment. So if this trend continues, it's certainly true that people in India and China are going to want to, have more cars and air conditioning, but they're also going to care a lot more about the worldwide environment. And so that could balance out, or maybe even more than make up for the environmental harm of them consuming a lot more dirty goods. Thank you for listening to me.